I'm telling this now because I lived through it, because I didn't disappear like she thought I would, and because her secret sat inside me for years, heavy and rotting, and it's time to let it breathe. I press my spine to the side of a parked car, metal cold even through my clothes. Rain slips into my mouth when I breathe too hard. It tastes like rust and pavement. My backpack is hugged tight to my chest, straps digging into my shoulders. It smells like stale cereal, damp notebooks, and fear that won't settle. Every car that passes throws light across me for half a second. Then I'm gone again. Seen. Unseen. She said I stole it. The words still scrape. A necklace. Something precious. Something I never touched. Mara said my name like it was already dirty. She always did that. My cousin, my almost sister, the one who smiled sweet and watched closely. Mom stood there, eyes flicking between us, torn in half. My stepdad stayed quiet, jaw tight, like silence could keep the peace. It didn't. Before the storm, life felt small but warm, school bells ringing. My shoes kicked off at the door, yellow kitchen light, my little brother's laugh bubbling up when I tickled his ribs. Normal, safe. Then the phone rang one night, voices dropped. Shadows stretched longer in the hallway. Something shifted, subtle and sharp, like ice cracking underfoot. I won't soften this, I won't rush it. I'll tell it exactly how it burned through me, how lies grow teeth, how rumors learn your name, how quiet strength is built when you have nothing else. If you've ever been betrayed, stay with me. Don't look away. This story ends differently than it starts. Her voice floats back into my head, smooth and confident, right before everything fell apart. No one has to know, she said. Not yet. I wake on the wrong side of a sound. The house hums with the cheap refrigerator and a clock that never learned to be gentle. Light creeps past the curtains like a person trying not to be noticed. I lie there listening to the small domestic noises, the kettle's tiny sigh, a creak in the floor, and count them as proof that the world is still ordinary. Ordinary is a warm shirt you don't have to apologize for. Ordinary is Eli's laugh ricocheting down the hallway. Ordinary is the smell of toast before 7. Ordinary is the soft way Mom says my name. My name tastes like a promise in those mornings. I tuck it back into my chest and breathe the house in. Our apartment is half mine, half borrowed, the lower shelf of the closet where I keep the notebooks I don't want anyone to find, the windowsill where I press coins into the glass between my fingers when I'm thinking. I am 15 and I hoard small certainties. I am also the one who makes Eli pancakes on Sundays because Mom works late and I don't let him eat cold cereal like some kind of punishment. I like the ritual, the way batter stirs to the rhythm of some quiet internal metronome. I measure my worth in small things, the way Eli smiles when I flip a pancake without splattering oil on his shirt, the way Mom's eyes soften when I fold laundry, just so. And then there is Mara. Mara with the hair that caught every light and turned it into a favor. Mara, who moved in before the boxes emptied, who took over a chair and never gave it back as if it were suddenly hers by long division. She calls me by a nickname like a coin she spends. She knows the exact tone that makes Mom's face go soft. She leaves the shower running for a long, luxurious minute and then smirks when I freeze because I'm turn and go. Mara is older by 3 years and smarter at the angles of people. She is a study in small, intentional violences. The borrowed sweater forgotten on her bed, the screenshot erased of my school project after she helped me with the formatting. I notice those things, tuck them away. I never say them aloud. That silence becomes armor until I mistake it for strength. We moved here after Dad left. The cardboard boxes smelled like other people's houses. The city smelled like wet pavement and possibility. Mom agreed to live with Aunt Rosa for a while, and Rosa's apartment meant cheap rent and thicker curtains. People talk differently in basements and kitchens that share walls. They watch each other's comings and goings because there is nothing else to watch. Mara grew into those glances the way mold grows into damp corners. Slow, inevitable, claiming space without asking. At first it was fine. Mara would braid my hair when she was bored and pretend she did it for free, and I would let her because little winds feel like light in the dark. She brought over candles and laughed loud enough to pull Mom out of the sink daydreams. Mom likes loudness. It covers her tired. Mom likes people who can paint the room with attention. I learned to watch the way Mom's face shifted when Mara did something small and deliberate, how a compliment landed like a coin on her palm and she kept it there like a talisman. I was close to Mom, but not in the same shiny way Mara was. There is closeness that makes noise and closeness that sits in the margins. I belonged to the margins. Eli belonged to me. Most mornings I wake to the bell and the clatter of the bus and the smell of coffee someone left in a mug on the counter. I get dressed in a room that smells faintly of detergent and old homework. I kiss Eli's forehead and I leave. I trade jokes with Jason on the stoop. Jason is a neighbor who notices the small things, the way I fold my jacket sleeves, the scuff on my shoe that I never get around to fixing. He spends his afternoons walking dogs for people who have better things to do than listen. He won't say much, but he'll say the thing that matters. You good? His eyes hold a map of kindness that doesn't need a passport. Mornings are small and they are mine until the blue of a day turns into a day that is not mine at all. The first fissure is something that seems too small to be a fault line, an argument at school over borrowed jewelry. A classmate asks to borrow a necklace for a dance. I say no at first because it was a new thing, and then I say yes because I am always the person who says yes until it matters. We argue about the clasp. I tell him the clasp is picky. It clicks one way and hums another. We laugh. Later, I realize I did not lose the necklace, but I remember saying I had it. Memory is slippery, so is gossip. The necklace isn't mine. It isn't cheap. It is a cold thing with a weight that keeps secrets. Someone in the family brought it out once, in a small, sunlit moment, the chain catching the light and scattering it like crumbs of gold across the table. Mom's voice when she described it was soft and old-fashioned, the way she says the names of things she grew up with, like the necklace belonged to someone important, or perhaps to the idea of important people. The clasp clicks a certain way that you can hear if you put it close to your ear. A tiny, habitual sound that anchors a memory. The jewel sits in the middle like a calm eye. I remember pressing it between thumb and index because I wanted to know how it felt to hold something that had belonged to someone else. Mara sees me holding a classmate's cheap trinket a week before the real thing goes missing and files it away like evidence. She can make observation a machine. She never tells me directly she saw me. She makes it work in a stitch. A comment here, a laugh there, a look at the wrong time. Then she creates a story, and stories jump apartments like mice. The day the necklace disappears, she is the first to have an opinion. Her words fall into the kitchen like hail. Where did you see it last? Mom asks, voice small and hopeful and then sharp with that old fear that family objects are the brittle bones holding them together. The room tilts. I feel it in my teeth. I protest. I speak. I make my mouth work like a malfunctioning radio. I never... I say. My voice comes out the size of a match. I tell them about the classmate's trinket at school, about how clumsy it was, how we argued, how there were no witnesses except the hum of the hall. I say I didn't touch Mom's things. My hands shake. My fingers pull at the seam of the sleeve like an animal knows a wound before the smell hits the air. Mom looks at me through a screen of disbelief. She is not the woman who wears quick judgments as armor, but the necklace is an area where old loyalties harden. Her eyes pool with that dangerous mix of tired and protective, a flash that can cut. I feel it come for me. Her mouth tenses, and in that tension I hear things unspoken. The cost of bills, the strain of trying to keep everything together, the stories we told to each other about how moving would fix things. Her voice when she finally speaks is small at first, like a thing forced through a narrow space. Did you take it? Mara breathes like a judge. I put it in her bag, she says. She doesn't hesitate. The sentence is simple, economical. It lands like a stone. The air closes like a fist. I taste blood in the back of my throat, though I haven't been hit. The kitchen sounds go further away and come back warped. Eli looks up from his cereal, face still powdered by milk-splashed crumbs, like a small animal interrupted. I feel the floor tilt. The world goes thinner. My protest presses at the back of my teeth, but will not leap free. I open my mouth. I try to say no, but the sound catches. My lips feel foreign. My throat is a dry well. The sensation is sharp and immediate, bile rising in my chest, not because I'm sick, but because my chest is a room where someone else started a fire. My breath comes in small bursts. My knees soften. My hands want the edges of the table because they are the only steady thing in a room that has switched languages. Neighbors gather in their own way. Mrs. Pollard across the hall stands in her doorway with a cup of tea, eyes narrowed like she is balancing curiosity with charity. People who did not know I'm real until a rumor labels me a problem suddenly file out of thin places. The kitchen, our normal domestic island, becomes a courtroom. Mom's face is a map of contradictions. My stepfather is there too, mouth pressed into a flat line that says, "Not my job," louder than any words. Silence becomes a strategy for him. He clears his throat like an apology to the air, to the house, to the envelope of bills he keeps in the nightstand. He wants peace. He wants the smallest possible adjustment to be all anyone asks of him. It's a kind of survival I don't have a name for. My phone vibrates in my pocket, a small clinical buzz like an insect trapped against glass. I yank it out. Messages, missed calls. A text from Jason, "You okay?" A meme from a friend. A notification from school, missing items reported. The light from the screen is sharp and small. It does not help. It only proves there's a world out there that runs on the assumption of facts until someone rewrites them. I try to show them the necklace's absence is not my absence of truth. I try to hold my evidence like a tray. The memory of the trinket, the time and place at school, the classmate who saw me with the cheap thing and not this heirloom. I set words down like stones and they slide off like rain. Mom's gaze is away from me now, toward Mara, which feels like the worst kind of betrayal. Not the one that rips out of you violently, but the slow folding away, so precise and so finished, you don't notice until it is gone. I feel muscles tighten along my spine, the animal part of me wanting to run. I want to run until I forget what my name used to mean. Mara's voice is all calm. She has rehearsed this. I put it in her bag, she repeats, like reciting a recipe. She does not allow for doubt. The words become a repetition that makes them real the way a chant makes a room change. I watch Mom's eyes glass over. The warmth I know in her pockets cools. Her face sinks into something older, folded and explained by the hardships she wears like a second skin. There is a particular sound, tiny, almost nothing, like the click of a clasp, that rolls through my head. It is ridiculous to think such a small noise would become a landmine, but memory does that. I hear the click as if something somewhere has locked. The necklace's memory becomes a metronome for me. One click, one life, one click, another life. I imagine the necklace's cold weight in my palm and it feels heavy enough to drag me under. I picture its tiny catch, bright and sure, and I can feel the imprint of it on my fingertip, though it was never my skin that knew it. I did not leave for dramatic reasons. I left because the house closed like a mouth. I left because the room that was supposed to be mine became a place where accusations fell like rain on a tent that had no poles left. I pulled on a jacket that didn't quite fit. I wrapped my scarf twice. The coat smelled like the washer and the faint lemon of fabric softener. It smelled like the ordinary things I would have to give up because someone else wanted a story. The air outside hit me like a hand flattened against my face. It had the clean, metallic, chemical note of rain that hasn't yet decided whether to fall. The hallway lights haloed me for a second, making my breath look slow and small. Neighbors' voices rustled at the door like paper. "You okay? Do you need a ride?" The questions are too loud. I want someone to take me in their hands and tell me what I already know, that the world is not leaning in this direction. But no one does that. Mom doesn't stop me at the threshold. She stands framed in the kitchen light, a statue of regret and law, and her silence is its own verdict. I want to curse her for standing there, for choosing the wrong side of a thing I cannot fight yet. I want to tell her the way her eyes had given Mara the exact shade of permission she needed to say my name like it was a stain. My bag is heavy with nothing. My throat is heavy with everything. I step outside and rain decides to begin. At first it is fine, a neat, polite drizzle like someone testing the weather. Then it thickens. It moves from suggestion to insistence. The street becomes a slick mirror. I feel it soak through the denim at my knees, and the cold creeps in like a memory that won't leave. I press my hands into my pockets to keep them from trembling. My jacket sticks to my back with the damp heat of human breath. A car's headlights split the street ahead. They look like two small moons. For a second, I think maybe it's Jason. Maybe Jason will pull over, roll down the window, and offer me a burger and a place to sit in the warm light of a booth where the coffee never judges. But the car slows. Not toward me, but toward the opposite curb. The driver looks right through me. My reflection bounces across their glass like a poor hologram. I stand there waiting. My breath fogs in front of me like a small, reluctant cloud. The rain drums faster. A clap of thunder shoves the air into my chest, and for one wild second, the whole city smells like ozone and possibility and fear. My phone vibrates again, another message. I don't look. I put my jaw forward like a person bracing for an impact. The kitchen light behind me dims. A shadow moves at the window of the second-floor apartment across the street. It pulls a curtain aside, and the silhouette I know, Mara, smaller from this distance, holds something to her chest. A coin-sized glint catches, and for a second my stomach drops because I think I see the necklace, or I don't. My eyes blur, my fingers curl into fists. I am wet now to the bone. The rain is loud in my ears, making my heartbeat sound like a separate creature tapping on my ribs. I step off the curb because I can't stand walking nowhere. The world is a smear. The headlights wash past me and paint the asphalt a wayward gold. My shoes leave prints. I don't know where I'm going. The promise that left my lips in the kitchen, you won't get away with this. It's a coal still burning hot in my mouth. I keep it there like contraband, then the headlights slice across again, nearer. They're coming toward me. My heart knocks so hard I can hear it in my throat. For a wild, unplanned second, I think this will be the salvation I didn't dare plan. I think someone will pull over and say, "Get in." I think the light will warm me, but the car keeps moving. It doesn't stop. My breath stutters into something like a laugh that isn't funny. The world tilts in a new, stranger direction. A horn honks far away, but time slows like syrup. The car's beam finds me, peels my outline from the dark. I see my face, pale and wet, eyes wide like a reflection in a cup. For a second, outrage and fear are twins in my chest. I taste metal in the back of my mouth. Then everything goes black at the edges as the light passes, and I step forward into noise and wet and the blur of a city ready to forget or record, depending on who tells the story. Fade to black. The house door slams from the inside like a verdict. The sound is final in a way that hurts. No argument left in it, only judgment. I stand on the stoop and feel the wood where I pressed my palm, warm and then cold as the weather changes. Mom's key rattles and the deadbolt turns slow and deliberate. The lock's metallic click is a punctuation that says, I am outside now and I do not belong. Her footsteps retreat. The hallway light goes out. The last frame of our little domestic movie clamps shut. Voices start. Not helpful ones. Not the ones that gather to bring you back. Instead, the corridor becomes a place where neighbors lean into the spaces between walls and decide which side of a rumor they will take. Someone calls me a liar from across the hall like it's a small animal they can toss at my feet. The syllables land with wetness as if spit. Thief. Ungrateful. Trouble. The words gather themselves into a chorus. I can taste stale tea on them. They send the school counselor like he's the official broom to sweep up our mess. He sits across from me at the kitchen table later, his knees too close to mine, his binder full of therapeutic stickers and civic placards. He asks the perfunctory questions. He has a chair that leans toward neutral and a face that wants to file me into a box marked problem child. He asks why I left the house. He asks if I'm safe. He never asks why everyone assumed my pockets could hold what belonged to someone else. He never asks if I wanted to take that necklace. He kneads his pen in circles, and I hear the sound like the mechanized turning of some bureaucratic wheel that will decide what resources, if any, I get. I go away, not glamorous, not cinematic. I take the little, shivering, necessary escapes that feel like survival rather than strategy. A 24-hour diner with vinyl booths and a jukebox that plays half-remembered songs is my refuge for a while. The coffee tastes like pennies. Not the comforting bitter of a well-brewed pot, but the metallic tang of an economy brand that has been watered down, reheated, and left on a burner. I cup the mug like it's a talisman, though it smells like regret in hospital halls. Under the fluorescent hum, people pretend not to notice a soaked teenager with a backpack full of damp notebooks. I pretend I belong in the chipped booth. I pretend solid things still hold me. Night is a colder teacher. I find the bus benches that the city leaves like donated bones on corners. The metal is freezing and it steals heat so quickly your limbs stop making sense. I curl my jacket tighter and my breath makes small, private storms in front of me. The pavement smells like old gum and the city's appetite for forgetting. I sleep on pulses of fear, short bursts of dream sleep, jerking awake when the cold crawls back into my spine. The blanket I get from a donation bin is rough and smells of other people's lives. Faint perfume, a whiff of smoke, the memory of a dog. I drag it around me like a poor cloak. Shame is an animal here. It peels skin from inside my skull and leaves the rawness exposed. Hunger sits at the base of my tongue like a small, constant pebble. I swallow it repeatedly and tell myself the pebble is just a pebble until I believe it. Meanwhile, Mara's campaign is a slow, purposeful thing. She knows how to weaponize smallness the way a rumor becomes a machine. It begins with a text. Anonymous messages to teachers, the kind that know the school's wording and customs so well, they sound like they came from an official. Then, someone I used to see in the hallway posts a photo on social media. The picture is grainy. Someone has staged a frame where my face is near an unremarkable pile of jackets, and in the caption, it says something like, "Watch your stuff." The picture is forged in tone and intent. It gets shared. Likes are their little toothpicks of approval. A whisper at church. An older woman who knows family history leans close and says, "I remember that necklace. Money's tight. People get desperate." The whispers multiply. They become the weather. She also sets small traps. A note left in the yard the morning after I sleep at the diner. "We know where you go." A throwaway account sends text to my school email threatening to reveal what everyone already knows. I start hearing my name in old friends' mouths like a new curse. The map of people's faces who used to nod hello now turns away. Social media balls up like tightening rope. Every new comment is a twist. Someone creates a satirical meme that uses my face pulled from a larger photo, places the necklace in my hand in Photoshop, and writes a joke that is not funny because it is positioned to hurt. The meme gets shared in their circles as proof. People who never cared enough to know me now have permission to dislike me. I stew. Anger coils around my ribs. Shame sits heavy. I move between them like a tightrope walker between two cliffs. At night, I whisper vows so low they are almost a prayer. I'll make the truth loud enough they can't ignore it. The promise tastes like copper. I repeat it until my voice goes raw. When the world packs me into a narrow room of disbelief, the vow is the one door I keep propping open with a shoe. Jason notices. He notices the small things that indicate a person isn't just a rumor. How I fold my hands, the echo under my step, a plastic tote abandoned in a stairwell. He finds me twice at the diner, once with cigarette hands, my teeth clenched around an idea rather than nicotine, and once with my face pressed into a coffee cup like I'm trying to dissolve. He doesn't approach me like the others. He approaches like someone who has seen fire and knows how to pick embers without burning his fingers. "You okay?" he asks the first time. He doesn't offer pity. He offers a watchful presence. He looks at me as if he remembers what it's like to be small and overlooked. The second time, after he folds me a sandwich in to-go paper with the care of someone preparing a child's lunch, he moves closer and says, "I saw Mara in your mom's room the other day." The sentence drops and sits between us. The room redefines itself around it. Risk walks into our corner like a stray dog. Jason tells me to be careful, that proving anything will mean escalation. She'll double down, he says, like someone teaching me the weather. He tells me what he remembers, Mara opening the jewelry box, a glance at the necklace, the way she tucked the chain into her sleeve like a magician hiding a coin. He offers to collect small proof. His memory is a ledger, and he writes neat entries. He warns me about security footage, about how cameras can lie, about how people rearrange facts in echoes. His voice is steady in that dangerous, practical way. He says he will help, but he will only risk so much. If you're going to fight, he tells me, we do it smart. We don't get sloppy. The margin between helping and getting burned is a hair. Eli does the slowest, cruelest thing. He believes Mara. Maybe he needs to. Maybe he wants the world to be arranged in a way that keeps him safe. His small love is pragmatic and childlike. He wants a neat reason for why his pancakes sometimes burn, why sometimes there's no one to tuck him in. When he stops calling, my chest hollows like a house stripped of furniture. The silence of his ringtone is a new, cold animal to sleep beside. I walk past his school once. He's on the playground with other kids. His back is a book I can no longer read. Mom refuses to listen, not because she is cruel, but because the story makes sense in a place where small luxuries are fragile. She asks for patience at first, then hardens. The look she gives me is not hate, exactly. It is exhaustion condensed into a shape that makes you small. She tells me to apologize like it's an exercise we can complete and slide off the guilt like wax. Say you're sorry, she says, as if a phrase could seal a crack. I try. My apology feels like a counterfeit coin. It doesn't land. It can't. My world starts to narrow to a corridor of options, vanish or fight. The vanishing is the seductive one. Walk away, change my number, move to a friend's couch in a different part of town, let the rumor digest and eventual people forget. Vanishing would hurt less right now, like a bandage you remove before infection. But my chest burns at the thought, how to let her rewrite me, how to let my brother be raised with a memory where my name is a cautionary tale. So I begin to choose the other path. I learn to count minutes in evidence and seconds in strategy. Jason becomes my quiet collaborator. He teaches me how to preserve things that feel insubstantial. He shows me how to photograph a sleeve seam so the texture is readable later. He tells me to keep receipts, to save messages, to screenshot the posts before they are scrubbed. He lends me a camera once with a hand that trembles like he is also pressing his own bets on a table. I learn the language of small facts, timestamps, file names, metadata. It is clinical, and it is comforting because it is something I can control. Control tastes like sterile tape. But there is a low point that is the hollow of the whole thing. The city seems to conspire with my fear. My stomach is a knot I haven't been able to untie for days. I wait in a dim stairwell while rain scours the world. I think about the necklace's cold weight and how it became a symbol that reshaped my family. I think about leaving a note for Eli and him finding it without the person it names. These thoughts become a weight that nails my feet to the floor. Loneliness is an animal with long teeth. It gnaws at me until the idea of making the truth loud enough feels like whispering into a wind that has already decided to carry only one song. I feel smaller than before, but also more dangerous in that way desperation makes you. Sharper, more precise. I rehearse the confrontation sometimes in the diner's window. What I'll say, what I'll show. I practice holding a photo like it was a weapon that doesn't need to cut. The night before the planned step, Jason finds a small, seemingly useless thing, a scratched receipt from a local repair shop. It is a strip of paper with a timestamp and a name. He hands it to me like it's an offering. The paper is soft under my fingers, the creases worn by someone else's wallet. The numbers on it are small and precise, and there is a name written in a hurried scrawl that matches what I thought I heard in the kitchen that afternoon. Mara's shorthand for making things disappear. Along with it, tucked like an afterthought, is a scrap of fabric, a tiny triangle of thread and patterned cotton, the kind of thing that should be meaningless, but it's frayed in a way that is not mine. I run my thumb over the edge. It smells faintly of her perfume. citrus and something too sweet. My heart does something like a bird mistakenly colliding with glass. It knocks and knocks. Evidence is not a tidal wave, it's pebbles. Small, stubborn proof dropped until a dam cracks. The receipt is a pebble. The fabric is another. My pulse spikes like someone pounding from the inside. For the first time since the lock turned on that door, there is a possibility that the map of my life might be redrawn. My breath comes hard. I feel it in the hollow behind my sternum where resentment has nested and mated with hope. I fold both items into the pages of a notebook like they are talismans. Outside, rain keeps punishing the pavement. Inside, the city hums indifferent. I press the receipt to my chest as if to listen to it. The numbers seem to write themselves into my ribs. The small thread of fabric clings to the web of my fingers like an accusation and a promise tangled together. I want to scream. Instead, I whisper to the rain. I whisper the vow again until it shapes my jaw. I'll make the truth loud enough they can't ignore it. My voice is thin but steady, like a line drawn on bone. Jason watches me with an expression that says both be careful and finally. He folds a blanket into a neat square and presses it into my hands. It smells like laundry and an unsaid apology. His palm is warm there, ordinary and human. I slide the receipt into my pocket. The fabric I tuck into the seam of my jacket against my skin. I feel the burr of it, a small physical proof that I am not entirely alone in this. The city keeps on. The rumor shifts with the same slow, indifferent momentum as the traffic. But inside my body, a mechanism winds up. Quiet, patient, necessary. I have pebbles now. I have hunger and a plan. I have the thud of my pulse and the scrape of fabric. I have the taste of copper in my mouth and the small, ridiculous, dangerous feeling of hope. My chest tightens. The rain sounds like applause and like a warning. I step out from the stairwell into the night and the world seems to hold its breath with me. The receipt feels wrong in my hand because it's ordinary. Paper is supposed to be anonymous, thin, forgettable, but this one is a map. The print is smudged where someone breathed on it. The ink gone soft at the edges. The shop stamp bites into the corner. Rosa's Antiques, 1412, 0614. My throat closes around the numbers like they are a throatful of cold water. I hold the paper until the fibers start to fall away under my thumb. It smells faintly of dust and motor oil. I fold the receipt once, then twice. The crease stabs my finger. The fabric, Mara's fabric, tucked against the receipt like a found motif in a song. It should mean nothing, a scrap of floral cotton, red and blue, frayed the way sleeves get frayed when someone tosses them against life, but something in the pattern is the same as the jacket hem I remember, that loose stitch at the cuff that always hung a day longer than it should have. I bring the scrap to my nose. Her perfume ghosts the thread, a bright citrus that scratches the inside of my nostrils like a sharp memory. My body does the things bodies do when a plan starts to make sense. Hands go cold. Eyes water without tears. My jaw knots. Shame and hope sit in my chest like two animals who have decided to share the same cage. The shame wails first. I replay Mom's face, the way her whole body folded inward when Mara said, "I put it in her bag." The humiliation of standing at the kitchen island, water cooling in the sink, neighbors pressing their voices under the door like a band trying to steady a tune. Mom's silence was a blade I had to swallow. I feel the scar of it. It sits under my sternum like a green coal. Then resolve cuts in. Not loud, not dramatic. It is small and cold and terribly steady. It clicks into place like a lock. The plan forms like frost on a window pane, precise, patient, required. I feel it in the small of my back first, a tightening that tells me my bones will be the scaffolding for whatever comes next. I will not let this be a rumor that lives forever. I will make it a record. Confrontation pulses through me like an ugly temptation. I imagine catching Mara in the kitchen, ripping the necklace from her hand, smashing proof across the table. The sting of a truth landed hard enough that it cannot be unmoored. The vision tastes like metal in my mouth. My hand curls. For a second, I want to walk right into the kitchen and howl at them all until Mom remembers the shape of me. But I am not a child anymore in my bones. I recognize the theater of rage, how it can be turned against you, reheated, and weaponized as proof of instability. Mara can hire a performance. She can call witnesses. She can flip the frame and make me the one who breaks. So I choose patience. Cold patience. Legal patience. Social patience. I think of evidence like building a house, not one shout, but many small bricks. I think of the kind of truth that will survive a gawker's inclination to doubt. I need proof with edges that cannot be easily smeared. I need timestamps. I need witnesses who do not owe Mara their peace. I need the necklace's clasp, something specific someone can identify by touch. A training montage begins in my head and then in my days. Quiet, methodical. It strips the cinematic music. It is not a movie. It's a series of small, sterile acts that make me feel almost professional and strangely sane. I learn how to preserve things so they don't evaporate, how to fold a receipt without crushing the ink, how to blow on a loose thread so the fiber shows up in a photograph, how to keep a scrap of fabric pressed against a page so the pattern is visible. I practice photographing rooms with my phone until the angle reads like evidence rather than art. I angle light to show the drawer dividers in the jewelry box. I catalog times after midnight when the house is quiet, when Mara thinks the world is gone. I copy messages into a notebook. Every text, every emoji, every stray punctuation mark she uses. I start a timeline on the inside back cover of my school planner. Dates, times, names, small brackets that feel like scaffolding. My hands learn language. They map the attic's dust in fingerprints. They trace the seam on a jacket and notice the tiniest mismatched stitch. I taste the flatness of adrenaline, like overbrewed tea. My fingers ache from pressing buttons because evidence requires pressing and pressing. My breath grows thinner in the hospital shapes of long nights. I drink too much cheap coffee that tastes metallic and pretend it is a tonic for staying awake. The city becomes a partner. Its public cameras, its forgetful shop clerks, its inattentive municipal systems that I quietly adopt for use. I learn to ask questions that don't announce my motives. Do you remember serving someone at 2 p.m.? And to record the answers in the soft blue light of my phone. Jason is precise in the way other people's kindness sometimes is. Practical, reluctant, honest. He brings me small tools. A voice recorder he says he uses to tape conversations he needs to remember. Like lectures, he says. His hands are steady. When he presses the device into my palm, it feels like he is pressing a warm pebble into my fingers. He teaches me how to leave my camera on a table pointed just so and not look at it until later. He helps me learn the difference between a recording that is legal to use and one that will get us into trouble. He has a way of looking at me that counts as a covenant. He will do this with measured risk. He will not make promises he cannot keep. I like the honesty of that. It steadies me. An unexpected ally surfaces in Aunt Rosa. I always thought of her like an old photograph, faded but warm, a woman who keeps tea and secrets in equal measure. She is quieter than Mom, and there is a merciful sort of clarity in her life that does not require her to be young. She remembers the necklace, the way the pattern on the pendant is a variation on a family seal, the way the clasp is a particular copper alloy that rings like a bell. She speaks about it in a tone I have to lean into, the way you lean into someone telling you a story about a person you used to be. She says she remembers where the box was kept. She says she misses the simplicity of certain things. She asks for proof before giving me more. Don't bring me rumors, she says. The words are simple and scalding. I bring her the receipt and the scrap of fabric folded neatly like a relic between 2 pages. She looks at the scrap like an archaeologist. Her hands are small and sure. She smells like lavender and the attic. She says, "This pattern. My sister had a dress like this in '98. Mara loves floral like that." There is a slowness in her voice that is a prayer for patience. She tells me stories about the necklace, which family member wore it, which funeral it was at, what it meant. None of it is salve. None of it is victory. But it is context. It is history that does not belong to Mara alone anymore. Mara senses the change. People who engineer lies are always listening for the wind to shift. She tightens. Her small betrayals become strategic strikes. She makes sure the right people are at the right place at the right time. She whispers new versions of the story to acquaintances who owe her favors. She starts to plant doubt in places that matter. The school office, the PTA list, a teacher who once mentioned grades in a way that could turn into leverage. She knows which buttons to press. Eli's teacher, who is strict and brittle. A volunteer coordinator who likes things tidy. I watch as she positions herself, smiling in photographs, doing the loud charity gestures that make her look saintly in front of the same people who would believe anything. Then she threatens. Small, precise, surgical. She calls once, breathy and light. "Be careful," she says. "You don't want Eli to have trouble at school, do you?" Her voice is molasses. The words are not made of her, they are made of consequence. I can hear the smile. I am not careful by nature. I am reckless and stingy with my own safety. But Eli exists like glass in my hands. He is not a plan. He is a person who believes I am capable of pancake-making miracles. The idea of him being punished because I spoke up is a stone I cannot swallow. The threats are enough to make my mind list possible losses like a budget. If I push, will Eli lose scholarship for the after-school program? Will a teacher believe a fudged attendance sheet over my explanations? Will Mom, pressed by community opinion, double down and pull Eli closer? I feel the ground shift. The fight smells suddenly like more than the saving of name. It smells like an escalation that could fracture other people I love. My internal compass whips between fury and fear. I think about silence. It is seductive in a way that feels like drowning. If I say nothing, maybe Eli will remain untouched. Maybe the rumor will be a softer bruise. If I say everything, maybe I will be the one who loses him. The moral test is not a sparkle-lit duel. It is a suffocating calculus that dissolves me into decimals. I sleep badly. My mind writes lists like a ledger: risk, consequence, witness credibility, public exposure, legal recourse. I educate myself in small grammar, how to make a complaint that sounds factual and not vindictive, how to keep my voice steady in a meeting, how to bring someone else with me so my words have the weight of 3 bodies, not one. I draft long, careful notes to Mom under the guise of apology, phrases I can use in the meeting I plan that won't hemorrhage into an argument. I delete and rewrite them until the words read like a report. "I'm sorry," I plan to say, "for whatever part I played in the hurt, but there are facts that need answering." It sounds clinical. It sounds like armor. I practice saying it in the diner window while Jason watches with a bowl of soup growing cold before him. He nods like someone depositing faith in a bank he can't inspect. The house becomes a stage. I call Mom and ask for a meeting under the pretense of apology because the safe way to begin is to appear contrite, soften the audience until they will at least listen. The day arrives like a trap sprung at both ends. My palms are a landscape of sweat. A dull sting crawls along my gums where I've been chewing my lip. The receipt, folded into the back pocket of my jeans, is warm from my body heat. The scrap of fabric is pressed into the seam of my jacket and scratches a small path across my rib cage. I step into the hallway and the light catches on the window across from the kitchen. My breath cuts short. There, in the exact rectangle of light, Mara stands with her back to me, the jewelry box open in her hands. My chest does something odd and sudden. It collapses and rises at once. The necklace gleams in the shallow glare. It looks small and ridiculous and simultaneously enormous, like a sun someone is hiding in the palm of their fist. Mara's fingers are deliberate as she tucks its chain into the velvet. For a beat, everything stops. My heart jams against my ribs so hard I hear it like a fist on wood. She looks up slowly. Her eyes find mine, and her smile is a practiced tilt. It is casual. It is dagger soft. She does not look startled. She looks pleased. My knees forget how to keep me upright. The meeting I arranged, my slow, cautious meeting, feels like a stage where I have stumbled onto the actor I didn't know was rehearsing the scene. For a second, I want to rip the box from her hands, to expose the metal ring and the clasp and the tiny inscription I remember Aunt Rosa saying belonged to our family. For a second, I taste iron and the idea of redemption. The room closes in with that sound, small and catastrophic. My breath scatters. I can hear the tick of the clock, loud as an indictment. The apology on my tongue turns brittle. My hands go numb. Heart stops. I make a list. I always make lists when my chest is full of too much to carry. Paper calms me. The pencil bites into the page and I can feel the shape of each task like a step to walk on. No violence, no theatrics that could be twisted into madness. Surgical, quiet, proof that will not melt under a second's heat. I want the kind of exposure that leaves no place to hide a lie. First, timestamps. Every photo I take must have a moment attached to it, like a time-stamped pulse. I angle my phone so the light hits the necklace's shadow just so the chain leaves a line the eye must follow. Jason teaches me about metadata, how the camera buries a small truth inside the file. He shows me how to export it, how to lock it in a folder that won't be tampered with. He speaks in patient, brittle sentences, and I copy them down like prayers. Second, audio. I carry the recorder like a prayer bead. Jason presses the device into my palm and his fingers are steady, warm against the cold. Catch it when she says it, he tells me. The phrase is simple and lethal. I imagine the sound of her voice admitting the lie, the way her tone would clip and fall when she thinks she's safe. I practice breathing quietly into the recorder, learning the art of not being heard. At night, the device sits under a cushion like a sleeping animal, and my shoulder grows sore from not moving, from holding the position that patience asks of me. Third, messages. I copy everything. Every message thread Mara touched, every emoji she used to make a joke sound like proof, screenshots that show the sequence. A hidden message thread I find, one her throwaway account used to sanctify the lie, reads like a map of intent. I photograph the thread, then email it to myself with a timestamp so a third party can attest to having received it. It feels ridiculous to secure the obvious, but obvious is what people will try to fog. I build a net of redundancies. Small victories glue me together. Jason sneaks into Rosa's shop. Rosa, who runs the cluttered antique place with its bell that rings like a small bell in my memory, and quietly asks for footage. He walks back with an awkward grin and a thumb drive that feels like contraband. The footage is grainy, smeared like oil paintings after rain. But there she is. Mara's shoulders hunched over a velvet box. The chains glint, catching a sliver of sun. The timestamp hums across the corner like a righteous footnote. I watch the clip alone in my room, and my throat is a tight loop of noise. Tears come without warning, hot and useless. I press my forehead to the screen until the pixels blur and the proof feels less like an accusation and more like permission to breathe. Aunt Rosa corroborates. She runs her knuckled finger across the metal of the necklace in the dim of her shop and hums a low sound like a hymn. This one, she says, the middle link is a little off. Someone soldered it years ago and it left a tiny scar. She hands me a magnifying loupe and I peer into the world she loves. Tiny flaws become everything. Her memory is an instrument. Her confirmation is like a teacher tapping the chalkboard so everyone hears. Mom's doubt, like a brittle shell, starts to crack. Hairline fractures that make sound when you press them. I hear it in the way she listens at the end of a sentence, as if she has learned to weigh words again. But small victories are not guarantees. Mara is a patient animal. She senses the wind shifting and she retaliates with calculated cruelty. She spins an alternate narrative and sends it into places that matter. One morning, I get a text that looks like a ransom note for reputation, an accusation against Jason, photos doctored to suggest something unsavory, messages rearranged like a puppet show. The school office receives an anonymous packet with evidence that suggests Jason has been harassing volunteers. He is stunned, pale as a page. He comes to me and his hands tremble like someone who has been pushed into freezing water. He swears he did nothing, but the accusation spreads like oil. I watch his face and think of how quickly people will find new reasons to discard you. Then the school admin calls. They do not call with the warmth of someone resolving a problem. They speak in policy. They mention Investigation, safeguarding, possible suspension. Eli's name drops like a stone. The possibility that my brother could be targeted crawls along my spine like cold fingers. Panic is a precise thing. It focuses everything until the world narrows to a single tunnel. Protect Eli. The plan needs armor for the ones I love. Obstacles rearrange themselves into a landscape. I have to pause and consider collateral. The line between exposing and tearing down becomes thinner. I strategize ways to minimize harm, timing the public reveal in a place that has witnesses who aren't friends of Mara, telling the school the bare truth so Eli doesn't get punished unfairly, making sure Jason has alibis and people to vouch for him. I spend hours on the phone arranging backup, coaxing reluctant allies to be ready to speak if needed. My stomach knots and unties and knots again. I am not just fighting for my name. I am trying to thread a needle through a moving fabric. I stake out corners like a cardinal marking territory. Late nights become my classroom. I sit in a car with the heat off and my breath fogging the windows. The city is a collage of dim parking lot lights and the scent of engine oil. I learn the rhythms of the house, what time lights flicker, when footsteps fall like rehearsed beats. Sometimes the stakeouts are humiliating. I doze and wake to find a stray raccoon has bared its teeth at me like a critic. Sometimes they are victorious. A silhouette moves in a window at the exact minute the timestamp indicates. I press the shutter only when the camera reads the moment exactly. My hands go numb from holding them still. I become a ghost in my own life to be present for the others. The emotional center of all this is Eli. I watch him from a distance like a guardian animal. He is small and bright and utterly human. The day I decide to sneak into his room, my hands shake with the gravity of the act. I creep through the hallway with socks the way thieves in movies slide across floors, ridiculous and tender. His door is unlocked because Mom thinks we have reached some sort of fragile détente. I press my palm to the wood. Inside, he sleeps with his thumb hooked into the hem of his t-shirt. His lashes are a small, dark fringe on warm skin. I tuck the blanket around him because I am still the person who makes pancakes when bills are due. He rolls over, and the sliver of moonlight catches his face. He doesn't know it's me. He opens his eyes, and for a beat he looks like he sees a stranger. "Who are you?" he whispers, thick with sleep and suspicion. The question is a cold brand. My chest convulses. I kneel by the bed like a supplicant. The air tastes like detergent and the ghost of yesterday's cigarette. I press my forehead against the space near his shoulder and feel his warm, living weight. And I whisper, "It's me. I'm sorry I wasn't here." My voice is a raw thread. My apology slips out like a confession. He doesn't believe me at first. He squints. He mumbles that Mara said I left, the word like a tiny hammer. I tell him a lie that is also the truth. I'm fixing it. He sighs and buries his face in the pillow. I trace his ear with my finger, small, circular motions that anchor both of us. The moment is fragile and sacred and utterly dangerous if anyone knew. I leave before dawn and feel like a thief for having been both a thief and a protector. I apologize to the darkness for what I can't promise. The whisper of my apology sits in the hallway like a small, secret thing. The twist comes sharp and ugly. I realize a piece is missing, the clasp's imprint. Aunt Rosa can identify the necklace by the tiny scar on the clasp that no one else can see. It's the fingerprint of the thing. I search my memory and find that odd hole where a clasp fits into a locker, an imprint of history. The clasp could tie the chain directly to a hand that wound it. But the clasp is gone. Mara must have taken it out, small, surgical, deliberate. I imagine her hands in her diary, fingers quiet and sure, slipping the clasp between pages like a bookmark full of guilt. Stealing the clasp would mean direct contact. It means a trespass that could be called desperate. It means my face might meet hers in the act, and then everything becomes theater. I envision myself in the attic, chest heaving, fingers fumbling with pages and binding. My breath gets too loud. The possibility of exposure tightens my throat. But the clasp is the key. Without it, my case is a skeleton. With it, Mom's eyes might not be able to look away. Execution night is a study in nerves. I set a date, an evening when Aunt Rosa can come, when Jason can be on his phone, cued to play, when the house will have enough people to count as witnesses, but not so many that Mara can call reinforcements. I craft an email to Mom, dressing it with an olive branch of apology and the hook of, I have something we need to talk about. I practice the words until my tongue learns the rhythm of a voice that will not crack. I place the audio files in a folder that opens with a single tap. I load the photos into a slideshow on my phone, ordering them like cards that will tell a story without my voice getting thin. That night, I arrive with my palms raw from holding proof. My shirt clings to my back with sweat. Jason perches near the doorway like a lookout, his jaw set. Aunt Rosa sits with her handbag like an island of collected patience. Mom's face is an open map, and I read it and see the weather shift. Mara's smile is a practiced thing, small and flexible. She flirts with the angle of the room and adjusts her posture so the necklace sits in the light. For a second, I forget to breathe. I speak first because the plan says I should. My voice is steadier than my hands. I open with apology because it lowers defenses. I tell the story in measured facts, times, receipts, sightings. The slideshow breathes the visuals I cannot force into their minds. Jason taps play on the audio. Mara's voice flows out, calm, habitual, admitting fragments of the lie in a tone she used thinking no one would be listening. Aunt Rosa points to the clasp scar in a photograph and recites the history like a verdict. The air thickens. Mom's face loosens and then tightens as the web of evidence unfolds. I'm careful to couch the reveal with protection, words that say marriages and children's schooling are not targets. I make it clear this is not a spectacle. It's repair. My sentences are sewn with care. I do not want to humiliate anyone unnecessarily. But the truth moves like a tide. It shifts the furniture. Eyes swivel. Someone near the window makes a small choking sound. Then the lights flicker. Electricity stabs like a finger across the room. The soft projector light sputters. Shadows leap and fall. The phone screen goes dim for a second and then bright. Time lurches. In that breath, Mara moves. She doesn't argue. She doesn't reach for a chair to defend herself. She lunges, not violent, not bloodied, but furious and animal toward her diary on the low table where she had left it open, the clasp tucked between the pages like proof in a book. Her fingers close around paper. It happens in a freeze frame, the sound of her palm on the leather, the squeak of her shoe on the rug, my mouth opening into a scream that is swallowed by the flicker. Jason leaps up. Aunt Rosa gasps. Mom's hand goes to her mouth. I see the diary bend like a lung and the clasp flash once in the thin theater light. Time pauses in my chest. The hang of the moment is a pulley. Will the diary close? Will the clasp be crushed? Will the script of evidence be undone in a second by the sheer of her desperation? The air tastes like pennies and threat. My fingers go numb. My plan teeters on the edge of whether one small object will survive a lunge. I lunge too. I breathe, and it feels like someone finally cracked a window in a room I've been sleeping in for months. Air I didn't know I'd missed slides over my skin. My voice does not wobble. It is a narrow, hard thing that I push out like a key through a lock. I lay out the days in order, the receipt, the fabric, the footage, the messages, each one a pebble I drop into a well. They plink. The sound rings up. Jason hits play. Her voice comes out of the little speaker like buttered menace. Calm. Certain the words are plain and they are poison. I put it in her bag. The recording catches her saying, and then the tiny, ordinary addition that finishes the crime. So they'd know. The room holds the sound. I feel it in my molars. The air tastes coppery. Aunt Rosa leans over the necklace with a loop and describes, quiet as funeral hymn, the small scar on the clasp. An old solder mark that means one piece of metal touched another and never quite forgot it. She says the name of the relative who once owned it, the little ritual that wrapped the jewel in meaning. Her voice shakes on the edges, not from fear but from the weight of evidence coming home. The details are private, specific, impossible to fake with a joke and a borrowed picture. They land like a declaration tearing wallpaper. Mara's face goes through a weather sequence. First, pale, then slack, then the tight, flicking panic behind the eyes. I hear the soft sound of her inhale like a small animal caught. Her hands tremble, her fingers curl as if they are trying to hold an invisible shape. Sweat beads at her hairline and the light catches it. Tiny jewels on skin that used to look artful on her. They look like small crimes now. Neighbors lean in where they stand, shoulders hunched, grocery bags clutched like talismans. I feel their attention like a pressure. It hurts. It steadies. Mom's grip on the back of a chair loosens and then slips as if someone finally untied a knot she didn't know was there. Her mouth moves into an "I'm sorry" that isn't practiced. It is raw and immediate. The words fall out as if dislodged from something stuck for years. She kneels. Her hands shake so badly she can't fold them. The tremor is in her whole body. "I'm sorry," she says. The shape of the apology is jagged and real. Her voice curls and breaks. I feel bile rise, old bitterness mixed with air and relief. I do not let it come up. I hold it down like a pressed flower. My hands are steady, my lungs open. The floor gives under me and then steadies like a sea that learns its rhythm. Eli runs. He is a small hurricane of limbs and a voice too bright to be heavy. He throws himself at me like the world is a safe place again. His arms find my waist and squeeze with a ferocity that hurts in the best way. Knuckles white, breath hiccuping. He buries his face in my shoulder, and the smell of him, sweat, toothpaste, the faint dust of crayons, makes something in me unclench. I let him. I fold into him, and the hug is messy and desperate and more honest than anything I've done. I hold him like a rescue, and I am being rescued. I do not gloat. The urge is a hot coal under my tongue. I let it sit. I remember the nights of cold and the way shame had its teeth in me. I watch Mara. She is shrinking inside a chair that used to be her stage. Her social grin is gone. The people who once smiled at her for jokes now look at her as if she is a puzzle they no longer want to solve. Comments that once fluttered like moths now turn to ash. The online posts that propagated the lie are taken down in a flurry, accounts scrubbed, a few apologies posted with the careful economy of people who mean their words less than the things they fear. Her friends drift like leaves off a riverbank. She calls names and finds nothing that answers. The school launches an inquiry that smells like bureaucracy and inevitability. They ask questions in stiff rooms with cold coffee. Administrators shuffle paper and make statements. There is a meeting where I sit with a folded spine and a folder of proof. People with clipboards read out facts that sound official. I watch Mara at the table, and the color drains from her face like paint being washed. The school does what schools must. Interview, cross-check, promise to protect the children in their care. It is not instantaneous justice. It is paperwork and policy and slow, steady consequence. The world of rumor learns it cannot always be the judge. Mara's social world cracks in ways that are not loud but are final. Invitations stop. The text threads go quiet. The people who once mirrored her voice refuse to pick up when she calls. Her followers on social media retract, unfollow, block, the small communal exhale of people aligning their public selves with safety. I watch it happen, and the watching is strange. Relief braided with pity. She is not punished with fury. She is punished by a thing worse for her, removal of the stage. Her control, the thing she loved, dissolves into air. After the initial storms, the practical work begins. There are counseling referrals, yes, and forms to sign, appointments to schedule. There is a kind of domestic triage where we soothe and stitch. I attend meetings where therapists speak like people trained to map broken things. They ask me questions with the delicate hands of someone learning to untangle thread. Who did I tell? When did I sleep? What helps me breathe? The sessions are hard. I have to put words in places they have not been before. I remember the nights on the bench, the taste of pennies and diner coffee, the scrape of a donated blanket. The counselor gives tools, grounding exercises, ways to name intrusive thoughts, a plan for when someone calls with bad news. It is not a cure. It is scaffolding. Mara faces consequences that are quiet and calibrated. She is asked to step away from volunteer roles at the community center. An offer for therapy through a community program comes with the suggestion of supervised service hours. She is not dragged out of the town in disgrace. She does not become a villain in the tabloids. Instead, She is given the painful, slow work of being watched and asked and made to answer. The community decides to demand accountability without spectacle. It is small and public and ache-filled, an arrangement that will cost her reputation and perhaps offer a path if she chooses it. I am not a judge. I am a witness. In the days that follow, I realize the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is the imagined scene where a person suffers in proportion to the hurt they caused. Justice is a verb that happens in paperwork and apology and the slow echo of consequences that reach into daily living. I wanted to hurt Mara because of the nights she sent me into rain. I wanted her to feel something that equaled my hunger. But what heals me over time is not the sight of her shame. It is the truth settling into daylight. Community members standing on the side of facts. Eli sleeping without the fear that his sister is a cautionary tale. I am surprised by my own lack of satisfaction in seeing her collapse. The triumph I sought is quieter, an unshakable record of what happened and a child's laughter creeping back like a stubborn weed. We rebuild in increments. Mom and I talk awkwardly. She cleans like a person trying to repent with elbow grease, washing curtains, reordering drawers, though the gesture is more about grounding than punishment. We go to family counseling. There are times when she looks at me with an expression that is so full of regret it hurts to witness. She says, again and again, "I didn't listen." Her voice is small and jagged. I answer with honesty that feels like a medicine. "You did what you thought was right in a hard moment." That does not absolve her. It simply makes space to move forward. Eli and I have rituals restored. Pancakes return on Sundays, sometimes burned because my attention drifts. We go to the park and he wants me to race him, and I almost fall on purpose to make him win. He trusts me in ways rebuilt by small, steady things. He calls more often. He leaves an extra dish on the table sometimes, a little generosity that means he is thinking of me. I collect details like offerings in a shrine. Each one is a stitch. I notice myself changing. The edges that fear carved into me are softer. My hands no longer tremble the way they did when I held a camera for hours on end. My sleep is deeper. Sometimes I awake, and for a half-second the old shame is a phantom limb. I do not rage at the absence of that old life. I practice gratitude like a small ritual. 3 things a day that are not ruined. They are usually brief. Eli's hair at the nape of his neck, the warmth of coffee that is actually good, a neighbor who says a small thing like, "You did brave." Mara's leaving town is not a cinematic vanishing. It is a slow packing of boxes into a car, 2 or 3 people helping, her face set in a way that looks more like resignation than defiance. She does not look back. Rain comes again that morning, larger, cleaner this time, and I stand under an awning with Eli, dry beneath the fabric like a small island of ordinary. The rain hits the street with a steady, kind percussion. It smells like possibility, or at least like the world is rinsing itself. Eli holds my hand. His fingers are small and hot and sticky from a pretzel he refused to share. The city is a smear of umbrellas and people who will not know this corner of our story. Mara's car pulls away, and the taillights become red commas in the wet air. She's not dragged through anything. She simply goes. The thing that terrifies me for a second is not her exit, but the idea of it being final, like a period placed too soon, and then I see her bend her head, adjust the rear view, and she is gone. A week passes, and life is a new grammar. There are calls from the school saying they are closing the investigation with recommended supports. There are messages from people who once scrolled past my name but now have something kinder to say. Small repairs hum in the background. A new set of locks installed, a donation to a community pantry, a counselor's note that says, "Progress noted." The world is quietly, awkwardly functional. Then, on a Wednesday that could be any Wednesday, my phone buzzes with an unknown number. I almost ignore it because the habit of caution is slowed into muscle, but the curiosity is a small parasite that wins. My thumb opens the message. The screen is blank for half a beat, then the text arrives. "You think it's over?" My chest tightens. The old reflex flares, a flare of hot panic that is quick and animal and used to owning me. My fingers hover over the screen. I can feel the echo of nights on metal benches, the taste of diner coffee, the scrape of my palm on photocopied receipts. For a beat, I am that girl again. Wet hair, keys clenched, promise burning like coal in my mouth. I smile. It is small and private and not for anyone else. The muscles around my mouth lift with something that feels like victory but is softer. Survival. The smile feels like a place, a tiny harbor. I thumb the phone closed. The screen goes dark. Thunder rolls in the distance, not loud, not angry, more like a punctuation mark of weather deciding to move on. Eli tugs my sleeve. "Can we get fries?" he asks, the mundane request that anchors more than any formal reconciliation. I laugh, a short sound that shakes dust from my chest. We walk away from the awning into the rain that does not soak us through because we are under the shelter of choices we have made and of truth that will not be rewritten. The thunder follows like an exhale. I carry the silence of the unknown text in my pocket like a folded paper, still there, but no longer sharp enough to cut. I learned that silence has a cost. It presses on your ribs. It teaches your body to fold inward. Rumors are cheaper. They spread because they ask nothing of the teller. Truth asks for patience, for receipts, for nights when you choose to breathe instead of scream. I learned that forgiveness is not a gift you hand to someone else. It's a tool you keep so your hands are free. I forgive so I can lift things again. I learned how to gather quiet proof, how to take photos that tell time, how to save messages without touching the original, how to write dates and places in a notebook so the truth doesn't drift. I learned where to go when my head felt like a room with the lights flickering, counselors who know how to sit with the ache, legal clinics that explain options without promising miracles, school advocates who understand how power works in hallways. I learned to protect the small lights, my brother's laugh, my own sleep, the way a safe person listens all the way to the end of a sentence. If you're living in the shadow of what someone said about you, hear me. You are not what they named you. Your body knows the truth before your mouth does. Listen to it. Write things down. Save the ordinary details. Ask for help, even when your voice shakes. Protect the ones who need you, including the version of you that still believes in mornings. If this story touched something tender in you, stay. Like this video so it reaches the people who need it. Subscribe if you want to walk the next stretch with me. Share your story in the comments if it's safe. Use an alias. Send it anonymously. Protect yourself first. I read them. I hold them carefully. Next week, I talk about rebuilding, about the ordinary work of putting a life back together after it's been scattered, about choosing joy without apology. I close my notebook, the one that holds every date, every scrap, every quiet victory. I press my thumb to the cover and feel the ink smudge warm against my skin. Outside, the rain thins. Dawn makes a pale promise on the edge of the sky. I breathe. I stand. I step forward. Truth was the only thing I brought home.